Well, let's get started tonight at Exodus chapter 16. Exodus chapter 16. We're on that weird roller coaster, right? That the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs. We had the plagues and the Passover, God's redemption of the children of Israel from Egypt, and that was a super high. And then their discouragement as Pharaoh pursued them out of Egypt and backed them up to the Red Sea, and they murmured and they doubted and they complained there. And so that was a low. And then God delivered them through the Red Sea. They were able to walk across on dry land. That was a great, great miracle. And so all of a sudden we're back on this great high. Chapter 15 sings this song of Moses and the children of Israel. Everyone was getting involved. Everyone was worshiping, praising God, trusting Him again. And then last week we saw that they come across, or they run out of water. And then the next spot that they stop that has water, it was bitter. And again, the complaining, the murmuring, the doubting crops up. Of course, little did the children of Israel know, number one, that there was Elam right around the corner, and they were going to have the wells of water and the palm trees and the rest and all that they needed. But even despite that, God showed a way for Moses to clean up that water, cast that tree down into the water, and the bitter waters became sweet. So we're kind of on that roller coaster, right? The reality is complex. This journey was not as easy as they maybe thought that it would be. But God hadn't abandoned them. In fact, not only had God not abandoned them, God led them that way, right? Pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. The children of Israel are not on their own. As long as they follow that cloud, God is evidencing that they can trust Him. God is evidencing that He can provide for them. Another episode of that happens in chapter 16. This is a very famous passage of Scripture because it deals with the story of Israel being given manna. I think everybody knows this story. Let's try to cover at least the first part of chapter 16 tonight. Number one, more murmuring. Okay? Number one, more murmuring. Exodus chapter 16, start at verse 1. They took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The children of Israel said to them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. So we're on to the next stage of our journey, where they were at in Elim, where there were the wells of water, the palm trees. They take up now their journey. Of course, doing so means what? They're following the pillar of cloud. They're following the pillar of fire. They're following Moses and his leadership. The next stage of their journey, though, we don't get very far. They're a little over a month into this. What does verse number 1 say? That it's the 15th day of the second month out of their departing. So if it's 45 days from their leaving, or 45 days from the time they reset the calendar, right? The Passover, those events reset Israel's calendar. That's the first month, the 10th day of the first month, all that. Whatever we're dealing with, we're talking, a month and a half into this journey. And they've come to the wilderness of Sin. This is a place, a physical location. It's a physical wilderness between Elim and Sinai. We know that that's where they're heading, right? If you don't remember that's where they're heading, remember Moses, when he left Egypt the first time, when he killed the Egyptian and went on the run, he ended up raising the flocks of Jethro in a wilderness around the base of a mountain. And what did God tell Moses? You will bring the children of Israel back to this mountain. So we know that that's where we are headed. They're in the wilderness between Elim and Sinai. And they start to murmur and they start to complain again. Now, it's a different reason this time. It's because they're hungry. Whatever food they have or had been rationing or whatever they left Egypt with, I don't know. We don't have a ton of those details. But desert life is looking them straight in the face. Whatever food they have or had taken from Egypt has run out and they have begun to hunger. Now, this is going to be a difficult task, right? If it's left up to Moses, how do you feed 1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million people, however many there are? Remember, Moses has already wandered around this same area 40 years prior. He knows what it's going to take. Moses knows that only a miracle of God can save these people from starvation. But that really leads us to a trust and understanding, right? What we have seen so far, God has not yet led them to a place where He was unable to provide for them. Well, He led us to the Red Sea, yes, and He provided a way across. He led us toward waters that were bitter. Well, yes, there was a way to sweeten those. Well, now we're led through a wilderness and we're out of food, right? So what does the last month and a half teach you? The last month and a half, if you're honest, is that, okay, we have faced difficulties, but God has provided for us. That God has given a reason to establish trust in Him. But again, Israel loses faith, and they murmur against Moses and Aaron. And that's kind of like us, right? There's always something or someone to complain about. Moses grasps it, and the children of Israel don't necessarily see it. They were really murmuring against God. Moses hadn't led them here on his own. They are following cloud, they're following fire. Sometimes it's easier to justify it when you can point your anger at a face, like a Moses or like an Aaron. It almost feels more justifiable, right? It would be hard for us to be honest and say, well, I'm really mad at God. I'm really murmuring and complaining against God. No one wants to, that just sounds bad, right? That just sounds terrible. So if we can blame someone, if we can blame Moses, if we can blame Aaron, shoot the messenger as it were, maybe that makes us feel better about ourselves. But listen, as we have seen, and we're going to see it again tonight, they struggle with this. They struggle with the murmuring. Right? Always remember that murmuring shows two things: unbelief and a lack of gratitude. Right? It's hard to murmur and express faith at the same time. It's also hard to murmur and express appreciation or gratitude at the same time. So it's easy to see ourselves here in this. Now, a people that were just gloriously redeemed from Egypt, guided over the Red Sea, led by a pillar of cloud and fire, again complaining and murmuring. And it's the whole congregation. It says so in verse number 2. It's everybody. And their rebellion gets so great that they really start to exaggerate things in verse number 3. Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. I don't remember that, right? This is not the first time that Israel in their complaint exaggerates. Okay? Exaggeration is not a healthy habit to get in. That is something that we will really struggle with, right? Making a mountain out of a molehill. Exaggerating facts. Nobody was saying this. Nobody was saying this when they were in Egypt. Be extremely cautious about that, right? That in your down times, exaggerating the reality of the circumstance. You're going to make things, you're going to get more frustrated pretending that things are worse than they could potentially be. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that in your relationship with the Lord, right? Don't exaggerate. Heaven's reign. Number 2, heaven's reign. It says in verse 4, Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or not, or no, as it says. Now God's going to make it rain. Now what's going to rain? You think, man, maybe fire and brimstone the way they're acting, right? No. Maybe they deserve that. Be careful wishing that on people that complain, because we can be super guilty of that ourselves. But God was actually going to make it rain bread from heaven. I like what it says there in verse number 4. It says, behold. That's like an exclamation mark. When God speaks and says, behold, like watch, pay attention to this, right? Check this out. Behold, I will rain bread from heaven. There's grace there to be seen that God was going to provide for them. He was going to continue to provide for his children, because that's who he is. Not because obviously they deserved it, and not even because they were trusting him, right? Can you imagine what a spot we would be in if God only provided for us when we trusted him? If God only provided for us when we trusted him to do so. Oftentimes we're like the children of Israel, that God provides for us even when we don't trust him for it. And that like sometimes that temporarily acts as a spark, right, to get us back on track and trusting him and reignite our faith. But they didn't really deserve this, but God was going to rain bread from heaven and provide for them when they couldn't provide for themselves. He is faithful even when his people aren't faithful to him. Now, this would be a test. Manna is coming. They didn't earn it, but God was going to allow it to rain manna from heaven. But it would be a test. Now, think about that. The manna was a gift. It was a gift from God, but it was also going to be a test. God is going to give them this. God's going to provide for them, but he's going to check out where they're at with it. He's going to use this as a proving point. Are these people going to listen to me? Are these people going to be obedient? So here's how he does that. Verse number 5, let's just read the text for a bit. Verse number 5, and it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, at even, then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning, then ye shall see the glory of the Lord, for that he heareth your murmurings against the Lord. And what are we that ye murmur against us? Moses said, this shall be, when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For that the Lord heareth your murmurings, which ye murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. Moses reminds them, God's going to take care of you. But this is nonsense, guys. Okay? God is going to provide for us, but this has got to stop. What do you do? Who are you complaining to? Who are you complaining about? God hears the murmuring, and God knows and can see that it's not against us, it's against him. So Moses is pleading with these people, listen, God's going to take care of us, but this has got to stop, okay? We're not that deep, right? We're 3 chapters out of Egypt, and this is the 3rd time. So I'm trying to balance this, right? God's going to take care of us. We need to be appreciative. We need to be thankful. But this stuff, guys, we got to quit this. Verse 9, Moses spake unto Aaron, say unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he hath heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, at even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread. And ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it shall come to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "It is manna." For they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, "This is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents." The children of Israel did so, and gathered, some more, some less. When they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over. He that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. Okay, so as they obeyed, as they took what they were, as they measured things out according to the omer, people had plenty. Those that had gathered much, obviously, there's 6 mouths in our house, so there's going to be more for me to gather. And there'll be others, maybe there's just a couple people in their house and they just got to gather a little bit. But when measured against what God said to get, there was plenty. When measured against what God told them to take, there was plenty for everyone. Nobody had overage, nobody lacked. Moses said, "Let no man leave of it till the morning." Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning. They bred worms, and stank. Moses was wroth with them, and they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. It came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. This rain of manna was miraculous. Now, its appearance was not without reason, and it was a test from God. God, though he was going to graciously meet their needs, he knew their murmurings. He knew who their murmurings were against. So in giving this manna, he is going to give it in such a way to test their faithfulness. Okay? Both can be true. God can graciously provide, but in his gift, test their faithfulness. Now notice how he tested them. First of all, the manna was supposed to fall and would fall daily. Every day they were supposed to go out and gather manna. They were not allowed to store up vast amounts. Okay? It's not that you go out Monday morning and an omer for each one. There's 6 of us in our family. What's 7 times 6 there, Elliot? 7 times 6 is 42. So if I gather 42 omers worth, if I get all that on Monday, I'm good. I'm set until next Monday. No. The answer to that is no. Some tried that, right? What did it say in verse 20? Some of them, yes. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning. Those that gathered more, guess what happened to that stuff the next morning? The stuff that they didn't eat the day before. It bred worms. It stank. All that extra gathering yesterday for nothing. Israel is put in a position where they had to live by faith. Now, so far, they are evidencing that they are not very good at this. So God puts them in a position where they have no choice but to do so. They have to live by faith. Now, what if God doesn't give us manna tomorrow? I'll gather extra today, right? What if it doesn't come tomorrow? I'll gather extra today. No. If you gather extra, when you wake up in the morning, it's going to have worms and it's going to stink. You have to trust God today to give you manna. You cannot trust God today for tomorrow's manna. You have to trust God for that tomorrow. You have to daily live by faith. This is the example. This is what they're talking about when Jesus gave his prayer and said, "Give us this day our daily bread." Israel was put into a position where they had to believe that God would supply for them every day. They could not take it upon themselves to supply the next week's worth of food. They had to trust God to provide tomorrow. They have to trust today that God's going to provide. And so they're struggling with this. Okay, God says, all right, let's prove it. Let's prove them. Let's put them in a position where they have to trust me. I will give the bread every day. And they can't gather too much, and they can't plan for the future. They have to trust me for it. So they look to the Lord each day. Not a day would go by when they didn't have to trust God for their provision. Now there's an interesting thing that's given about the Sabbath day. Verse number 5, it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Okay. The one exception to the rule that I just said is what? Preparing for the Sabbath day. On the 6th day, God would give them what? God would give them twice as much. And they could collect twice as much. Why? So that they did not have to work on the Sabbath day. Just remember, 10 Commandments have not been written in stone yet. Okay? This whole concept of the Sabbath, this whole concept of a day of rest is not just a Levitical law kind of thing. Okay? This whole concept of 6 and 1, 6 days of work, 1 day of rest and worship, that is a biblical concept from the beginning, even before there was a law. Right? Now remember, when God put it in stone, He did not say, that this is something new. The Sabbath day is a new thing. No, it's remember the Sabbath day. Remember how that in 6 days God made the world, and on the 7th day He rested. All that's in Exodus chapter 20. So when you get there, that's not something new. Even now, God giving them manna, He says, okay, on the 6th day, I'll let you get twice as much so that you don't have to work on the Sabbath. God put His people in a position where they daily had to trust Him, but they also did not have to violate His purpose and His plan. They have a day of rest. God's got this thing figured out. God had this thing worked out and told them, you trust me, and I'll put you in a place where you have food every day, and I'll give you enough every week to cover the Sabbath day so that you don't have to work. Faith and love to be the driving force of their obedience. Here's the other test. God would provide the manna. He would give it. They had to go get it. They were supposed to get up each day, go out into the fields, go out to where God had provided it, and get it. Okay? God blessing, God providing, God gifting does not excuse laziness, does not excuse inaction, lack of work on our part. Now, let's say God proves Himself and God provides for a certain number of days, and you just kind of get in the habit, you know what? There's manna out there every morning. I think I'll be okay to sleep in today. I'm not going to worry. I mean, it hasn't been an issue so far, and I think I'll just sleep in today. Well, what's it say in verse 21? They gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. Don't take advantage of God's blessings, right? That's a good lesson here too. That's another way to prove them. I'm going to provide, but don't think that you can just take advantage of me. Don't think that you can live your life just based on assumptions and not have any activity or action or faith. Faith works, right? Faith puts us into action. And you got to go up, you got to get up every morning and go get it. God will provide it. But go out there, pick it up, and get it. And if you have a lazy day, I bet you won't have a lazy 2 days in a row. Because when you go out, and you go out about 2 o'clock in the afternoon to pick up the manna, and it's a melted mess, and it's gone, you'll think twice the next day, right? So think about it. God is absolutely right. This is the perfect way to prove people and their faithfulness, right? Number one, are they going to trust me? Are they going to trust me every day to do this? Not try to stock up, right? Not try to stock up a week's worth. Are they going to trust me to provide every day? Are they going to trust me to provide enough to let them have their Sabbath, to have that day of worship and rest set aside. Not only will they trust me for it, but when I have provided it, will they go get it? Will their faith be put into action? Will they get up? Will they go collect it? Will they just assume, oh, well, God will provide it. I don't have to do anything. I'll just lay here in my tent and we'll figure it out. No. This is the perfect way to prove a people who have thus far proven themselves not entirely faithful, murmuring, complaining. God says, all right, let's prove them. I'm going to provide. You're going to trust me every day. And with trusting me, you're going to get up and you're going to work and you're going to go get it. So perfectly balanced. Listen, I'm amazed. I'm amazed at God's purpose. And as God sometimes, we don't often get to see what God's purpose is in testing us, right? You think of guys like Job. Job lived and died not ever hearing from God what the purpose of his testing was. You and I know more about Job's test than Job knew himself, right? You and I know more about why Job went through what he did than he did. You may not know why you go through what you do. We know what's going on here with the children of Israel. And I'm amazed that when God reveals his purpose at certain times, how succinct it can be, quick, to the point, practical. This just makes sense, doesn't it? People have been complaining and murmuring. God has not abandoned them. I will take care of them, but I'll put them into a place where they can't help but trust me. And in trusting me, they got to work. And it's perfectly balanced there. I love this story. Without getting into what we can, talk about the analogy, talk about the type that the manna is, the bread of life, Jesus Christ being the bread of life, we can get to that in another lesson. But this test for the children of Israel, verse 23, he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seethe that ye will seethe, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept till the morning. The 6th day you can do all that stuff for the 7th day. And they laid it up till morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink. Okay? That which was kept from the 6th to 7th days, it didn't stink, and neither was there any worm therein. Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather. No, that's disobedience, right? You don't go out on the 7th day. You go on the 6th day. God will give twice as much. You work and you collect twice as much. And you cook it and you prepare it and all that, okay? We just talked about that. They just had that commandment. Lo and behold, some people went out on the 7th day, it says in verse 27, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? How long did it take the children of Israel to fail this test? Not entirely long, right? What, the first week? The first week of this. The first time they got to that 6th day, a bunch of them went out on the 7th day, and they're like, well, what happened to the manna? No, I gave you a test. I said, collect it. On the 6th day, get twice as much. And now God's frustrated. Come on, Moses. How long is this going to go on? Verse 29, see, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place, let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Listen, he repeats it again. Twice as much on the 6th day, no work on the 7th. It's like almost like everything has to be repeated before they get it. And then finally in verse 30, okay. They relent and the people rest on the seventh day. And the house of Israel called the name thereof manna. It was like coriander seed, white. The taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commandeth. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that ye may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. And the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. The children of Israel did eat manna 40 years until they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came into the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is the 10th part of an ephah. God said that he would provide for them in the wilderness. He wants them to take this, according to verse number 32, to take a pot of this, to fill a pot with manna. And they are going to keep this as a testimony. And you actually find out in the Old Testament they did that. They actually took a golden pot, they filled it with manna, and they kept it inside the Ark of the Covenant for generations, as a memorial, as a reminder of how God provided for them in the wilderness. This, when it says, give us this day our daily bread, the Bible reminds us this test did not last a week. This test did not last a month. Do you know how long this test lasted? They wandered at least 40 years in the wilderness, plus the time on the journey. And what does it say there in verse 35? The children of Manna did eat manna 40 years. Do you know when the giving of the manna stopped? Did you know the Bible tells us the day the giving of the manna stopped? Turn to Joshua. I think it's chapter 5. Joshua chapter 5. The 40 years of wandering are over. Joshua is in charge now. Joshua leads them. They're getting ready to campaign against the nation of Israel, or the peoples in the land of Canaan. Notice what it says here, Joshua chapter 5. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month, even in the plains of Jericho. And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the selfsame day. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. How long did the manna last? Until God brought them into the land and they could actually eat of the corn of the land. God provided manna for them every day. And this lasted for generations, for the entire 40 years of their wandering in the wilderness. They were put in a place where they had to trust God. Again, it makes sense now when you grasp the prayer that says, give us this day our daily bread. You and I are not acquainted with this, right? You and I do not go to the grocery store for one day's groceries at a time. We go once a week, Usually on Saturday, we go and we get the groceries for an entire week, right? We know basically on Saturday, all right, we got enough to cover us for the next week. We've lived that way for years, right? None of us have probably ever been put in that kind of position where, you know what, we have enough to get through today and there's not enough in the cupboard for tomorrow. Like there's nothing in there. The children of Israel lived that. And you know how long they lived that? Daily, for years and years and years. They were put in a place where they had to trust God. They kind of failed in these tests numerous times, so God says, okay, now they can't help it. They have to trust me. We would be better to trust God all the time, right? Without the test, without the murmuring, without the complaining. Learn by God's past goodness learn by what he has done for us that, you know what, he is a God that is trustworthy. He is one that we can rely on, lean upon, trust to provide for us. The children of Israel had ample reason. We're only a month and a half into this thing, right? We're a month and a half into this journey, and they're starting to stumble over faith. They're starting to stumble over trust. Okay, let's put them in a spot where they have to trust me. And the giving of manna becomes a great miracle. It becomes a great provision. It becomes a great type of the Lord Jesus Christ. It becomes a great test for the children of Israel. This test, the manna, will prove who's going to obey. Are you going to go? Are you going to get up every morning and go get it? Are you going to try to collect more than you're supposed to? Are you going to be lazy and not get up and collect and go out midday and try to find it? Are you going to try to carry over into future days stuff from previous? It's a daily test. It's a daily test. Who's going to obey today? Who's going to obey today? Who's going to trust today? And so this is just a really, really great story because it covers so much that is needed, right? A trusting and a testing. And as we have those, may God help us to, again, kind of like we were talking about last week, pass those tests. A test of their faith and their obedience. That is what the Lord wants. He tells us in 1 Samuel chapter 15 to hearken is better than to sacrifice, right? God wants obedience. God wants us to obey him. And so the manna becomes a great, great test whether they will do so or not. So think about that. Jesus is the bread of life. And we've heard the story of God gave them bread from heaven, and he did. And there's so much in that story that trying to cover all of it in about 30 minutes, that's really, really difficult. But it was good. It was a test. It was a great blessing and provision for them. And God help us to learn what we can there. All right, let's pray. We'll be dismissed. Thank you, Lord.